Coming up on This Week in Hockey East, we are calling this Opportunity Week. 3 teams that are right around the NCAA tournament picture play 3 of the top teams in Hockey East and a couple of really marquee women's matchups, which should do a lot for seeding in the Hockey East tournament. That's all coming up on This Week in Hockey East. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of This Week in Hockey East. Great to be here once again, along with Tyler Murray. I'm Eric Galante. A couple of outstanding matchups. We're going to talk about all of them. And it starts with a resurgence of one of the best rivalries in college hockey that has a ton on the line at the Whittemore Center as the Maine Black Bears come in to take on New Hampshire. Tyler, this one is so exciting to see, not just this game, but the fact that it's relevant again.
Yeah, that is a great part about it. And no surprise, both games sold out at the Whittemore Center this weekend, Friday on NESN, Saturday on ESPN+. And you're right about the level of this rivalry. Our guy Jim Connolly always says that the fan intensity in the building for UNH Maine might be the best in college hockey. Now, after BU-BC a couple of weeks ago, it's a toss-up for me. The noise level at Conte Forum was wildly high. But last year at the Whit, it was 2 ties between UNH and Maine. 3-3 and 0-0 the second game. UNH winds up winning both shootouts. And the Wildcats are back home after road losses to BC and Merrimack. But 2 things are working in their favor. They're 8-2 after a loss this year. They actually hadn't lost 2 games in one weekend all year until this past one against BC and Merrimack. And then at home, they've been great. 9-3-1 in Durham, New Hampshire, including upset wins over BU and Quinnipiac. And I think now you can call that win over Northeastern a bit of an upset. It's all happened at the building in Durham this year. It's been a very encouraging season, as we know. Their best record after 26 games in over a decade for UNH. But it's this stretch here that's going to determine whether or not this is a nice season or a special season. I mean, their next 6 games are against Maine, UMass, and BC. 2 games each against each of those top-ranked opponents. And there's just not a lot of margin for error in the pair-wise. They're at 16 right now. But Hockey East standings-wise, it's not impossible to move up to at least a 5 seed and get a first-round bye. But it's not going to happen with a few points here and there. They need regulation wins this weekend and beyond. 3 points a night feels like a requirement. And they're happy, of course, to have Ryan Conmey back after missing a couple of games with injury. If he's not in that lineup, they lose a little bit of juice. But when he's in there, UNH has one of the deeper forward units in the entire Hockey East Conference. Now, Maine, they've played some really tight games lately. They could be ready for an intense one again. That 1-0 win at UMass, a 2-1 win against Providence, and then the next night, a 4-3 overtime loss against Providence, which was their first home loss all season at the Alphon. On the road, they're a little closer to 500, 7-5, but you look at who they've lost to on the road this year, some pretty high-quality opponents for Maine. At BU, that was 2 wins for the Terriers. Quinnipiac, and they split that weekend, and then Northeastern and UConn in tough conference play. Now, this year, the Black Bears have had the upper hand in the season series so far. Back home, a 5-2 win in December. Josh Nadeau had a hat trick, and it was actually Albin Boya's first start in net. He was in for Victor Osman that night, and he stopped 18 of 20 shots, and now he's become one of their go-to guys. He started each of their last 3 games in net, and you look at the whole season, he's gone 7 starts without giving up more than 2 goals, but that actually stopped against Providence on Saturday. Half of those 4 goals came on the power play, but Boya giving Benbar a really good option for Friday, Saturday, maybe both, we'll see. But speaking of the power play, Maine was cooking last weekend on the power play. 4 of their 5 goals came with the Maine advantage, including on Saturday when they scored in the final minute of the first and the second period on the power play. Now, we just saw BC score 4 power play goals against the Wildcats of UNH on Friday, and the first 3 power play goals came 16 seconds or fewer into the penalty. So that's a big emphasis, of course, for Mike Souza this week. But Eric, as you know, no team can survive giving Boston College 7 different power plays. And that's going to be a big point of emphasis, I'm sure, in that big series as well that you're going to have coming up.
Yeah, that's right. UMass and Boston College in a home-and-home this weekend. This is a Friday-Sunday, so Friday will be at the Mullins Center, and then Sunday will be a solo game for college hockey on Sunday. This is one of those classic games that, at least on paper, you have a UMass team that's only given up 5 goals in their last 5 games against a Boston College team that is averaging 5 goals a game in second semester. So which of those things kind of wins out? Michael Hrabal has been the big reason why that UMass has been as good as they've been lately. His last 5 games, he has a 101 goals against average, a 968 save percentage. And remember, the only loss in that 4-1 stretch was 1-0 to Maine, as you mentioned, on home ice. But the thing that I think is interesting about UMass, and Greg Carvel, we just talked to him a little bit earlier today, and he said it. He said, we're just really finding ourselves defensively. We were a young team. We have a lot of new pieces coming in, but we're starting to figure it out. And we feel like we're a pretty good defensive team. And one of the guys that he shouted out was Samuli Ninasari, who's playing alongside Scott Morrow. Said Scott's kind of a hard guy to pair someone up with sometimes because he likes to do so many things and finding that right piece. But Ninasari has fit in really well. Scott Morrow likes playing with him. They like playing with each other. And it's one of the big reasons why this defense has been as good as it's been lately. Again, only 5 goals allowed in the last 5 games. Now, the question on the other side to me is, what about the offense for UMass? Now, they've, as Greg Carvel said on his call as well this week, we won all the games, so we feel like we're scoring enough, right? But he kind of said it in jest. But the thing I think he's looking for is his power play. So they have not scored now in 6 games on the power play, 0 for 13. So there's 2 ways to look at that, right? You can look at it as a negative. Okay, they need to score more on the power play, but I actually take it the other way. How much the last few years have we talked about this UMass offense being all about their power play? But they're winning games without their power play right now. So if their power play comes, which I think everyone expects it to, and it's not for a lack of chances that their power play isn't scoring, that's a whole new wrinkle for UMass that they might be able to win some slightly higher scoring games, but they have not had to right now. But what does this weekend bring when you have a Boston College team that we've talked a lot about? Again, 5 goals a game, second semester. Gabe Perreault, who is now the national leader in points, he scored in 13 straight games. Will Smith has a point in 13 straight games. Ryan Leonard has a point in 11 straight games. How do you slow this offense down that has not been slowed down? They've bounced back really well, especially early, that UNH game. The fact that BC scored 3 goals in 5 minutes stand out because of the slow start against BU in the Beanpot semis. That was a point of emphasis for Greg Brown. So that really stands out. And then the last point on BC, they were a little bit banged up on Monday. No Andre Gasso, had to leave that UNH game. They're still without Will Vogt the last couple of games. So we'll see if that factors in as well, as Boston College a little bit banged up, as everyone kind of is this time of year. But they take care of business Monday against Harvard, kind of that last real minefield in terms of the pairwise. They're in a good spot right now. We'll talk more about the pairwise a little bit later, but an exciting top 10 matchup this weekend.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that Greg Carvel has anything to prove at all. Championship, 2 Frozen Fours, back-to-back Hockey East titles. But maybe one thing left on that resume is trying to turn around the results against Boston College. It's either at 500 or a winning record for UMass under Greg Carvel against everybody else except BC and BU. I think a lot of teams have that same issue as well because it's been such a good run for those Boston schools. But really excited to see what kind of fight UMass are going to put up against what feels like a pretty unbeatable Boston College team right now. On the women's side.
And in fact, Tyler, Greg Carvel said today, he said, I'm really excited to play this game because, like I said, we think we're pretty good defensively. I can't believe we've even lost games recently because how well we're playing. Now I get to test that against one of the best teams in the country. So he's pretty excited for this matchup.
I'm excited for a BC women's matchup against Northeastern this weekend as well. It's a home and home, 2 p.m. puck drops both Friday and Saturday on ESPN+. Home stretch here for the Women's Hockey East schedule. Each team has 4 games left between BC and Northeastern specifically. They're both tied for second place with 45 points. So this could be a weekend to determine who gets home ice in the semifinals if these 2 teams were to face off again. And that's not an outside chance of that happening. They're both 7 points clear of the 4 seed and then 7 points behind the top spot, which is UConn. We'll get into the Huskies in a little bit, but we've seen this BC Northeastern matchup already this year. It was a 3-1 win for Northeastern with 2 third-period goals. That game was played at Dorothy Talbot Rink as part of Gloucester's 400th year celebration. So a while ago in neither team's barn, and both teams have been through a lot since then. So a much different feel, I would imagine, at Connie Foreman Matthews Arena. And for Northeastern, they're really battle-tested lately. If you go back a game before the Beanpot, 8 of their last 10 contests have been decided by 1 goal, and they haven't lost any of them. They've got 2 shootout wins, 3 overtime wins, and then they won the rest in regulation. Now for the Boston College Eagles, Grace Campbell, their goaltenders looked really good lately with a 9.45 save percentage in her last 6 games, and it sets up a marquee goaltending matchup with Gwyneth Phillips. So that should be a lot of fun. And looking ahead, after this matchup, 2 games this weekend, just 1 more for BC and Northeastern. They got a weekend against 4th place UNH, 2 games. Northeastern, 2 games against 6th place Vermont. So this head-to-head could really determine a whole lot in who plays who and who plays where in the postseason.
And we're going to talk about that Vermont team, Tyler, because they have a massive game with BU on Friday to kick off their weekend in what could really determine who is getting a bye into the quarterfinals in the first round and who has to play in that opening round. UVM is 1 point clear of BU right now for the 6th spot entering this weekend. We talked a little bit about UVM a couple of weeks ago on the show and how they'd been pretty good at home and had struggled on the road. Well, to their credit, last weekend against 2 of the teams near the top of Hockey East, Boston College and Providence, 2 ties. They won the extra point on the road at Providence in a shootout, and now they put themselves in position to take on this BU team. But it's important to note for Vermont, after Friday, they play UCONN Saturday and 2 games with Northeastern, as you just mentioned, at Matthews Arena. So Friday becomes massive for UVM in terms of them trying to get out of the opening round. When these 2 teams played last time, January 19th and 20th at BU, the Terriers scored 10 goals in those 2 games. They outscored UVM 10-3. However, since that point, BU in 6 games has only scored 8 times, and they have just 1 win on the road at Boston College. So how does BU try to find some of that offense that they had at Walter Brown Arena? Can they bring that up north to Gutterson Fieldhouse in a big game on Friday that could determine who is going to the quarterfinal and who has to play that opening round game?
All right, Eric, time to take a few short shifts presented by the Shift Group, helping elite athletes and veterans become elite sales professionals. I'll go first here. A home-and-home at Lowell and Northeastern, one of the 2 Nesson games we've got this weekend. A Friday at Lowell's on ESPN+. Then the Nesson game is on Saturday at Matthews Arena. And Northeastern, deservedly so, the talk of the town. They're on a 6-game winning streak, up to 8th in the Hockey East standings, when maybe a month ago you could have said, oh, that's a real sleeper 10 or 11 seed. But they can look now at their upcoming schedule and where they are in the standings. The 6th seed is very much in reach, and if they get some help from BU against Providence this weekend, which you'll dive into in a bit, and then they keep rolling with 6 points of their own, they could somehow be 2 points out of a bye after all the struggles of the first half. And lately, they're doing it with offense. They're averaging almost 4.5 goals per game during this winning streak. They've got 8 power play goals in the last 6 games, of course, with 3 on a 5-minute major to decide a game against Maine in one of their better wins of the year. Justin Ritzkovian has scored in every game during this win streak, 8 points in his last 3 games. And after this weekend, Northeastern, they have to go on the road for 4 of their final 5 games, including 2 at Maine and 1 at Providence. So if they do find their way into a top 5 seed, they'll have really earned it, but it starts with taking care of business this weekend.
Yeah, let's talk about that BU Terriers team who just dropped the game to Northeastern in the Beanpot final in overtime. And I think this is just such a great example of life in Hockey East right now. I know it's not officially a Hockey East game, but okay, so BU here, as the number 3 team in the country, is just 3-4 in their last 7 games, Tyler. But it feels like BU's played really well here, and it's kind of that's sort of the task of Jay Pandolfo here, trying to figure out what has been kind of hockey luck and what is sort of some adjustments that need to be made. I mean, they outshot Northeastern 36-17 in the final. There are a couple of real turning points. BU had a power play early in the 3rd period. They did not convert. Northeastern had their one chance that I know some BU fans weren't thrilled with, but Northeastern had their chance and BU couldn't convert their penalty kill. Northeastern took advantage, and credit to Northeastern for that. So you look at some of these games here. So it's 4 losses. 3 of them are by 1 goal. A couple of them are in overtime to Northeastern. The one that wasn't by 1 goal to Boston College was a 4-1 game. You were there for that. That was a 1-goal game the whole way until a couple of empty netters. Plus BU hit 3 posts that night. And all of these losses, again, are to BC and Northeastern. So where is this BU team right now? Are they the top dogs that we feel like they are? Is there something out of this 3-4 stretch? Again, that's really going to be interesting to see. And it's this time of year where, boy, life just gets difficult in Hockey East. These teams are so good. There's no games that are easy. And sometimes you do get these little stretches. And now you come out of that into this Providence team, which had a real, as I guess Mike Logan said on the radio, we heard on Twitter, a big boy win for Providence on the road at Maine to get that done after Providence had lost a couple of games in a row, 2-1. So it was just, it was important to get that win. to begin with. B, it was important to get it to move up to 11 in the pairwise. We'll talk about the pairwise in a moment, but UMass and Providence have done enough here recently to make you feel a little bit better about them. And again, we talk about opportunity this week. Providence getting BU. Get a couple wins here, you've really secured your spot in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, maybe you don't have big rivalry matchups beyond UNH and Maine, but some really intriguing games. This is going to be a lot of fun on the men's side. But on the women's side, we've talked about UConn women a lot this year, deservedly so. We just got to tip our caps to the Huskies. They've already clinched home ice in the quarterfinals, and they've got Merrimack, Vermont, and then BU twice coming up as they look to nail down home ice throughout the entire tournament and try to get that regular season championship. And for me, it's kind of hard to imagine them being tripped up at this point. They don't have a conference loss since October 20th. They started 0-3. They're coming off a 5-1 win against Holy Cross, but things were getting a little bit tight before that battle-tested experience we always talk about. 4 straight games from January 27th through February 9th. 0-0 tie and a shootout win against Vermont, a 2-2 tie and a shootout loss to Providence, then a 2-1 overtime win against Providence, and another 2-2 tie and a shootout loss at Northeastern. Pretty crazy. I mean, I think it's setting the stage for what should be some incredibly entertaining postseason hockey in 2 weeks. And yeah, for me, UConn's been one of the best stories of the season, holding off a really impressive attempt to knock them off by BC and Northeastern. And they're just a few games away from hanging on and getting that regular season trophy.
Final thing for me, and I feel like we're getting close enough here. Let's just check in on this NCAA tournament picture. We've talked a lot about how many hockey teams are going to get in. What's this whole Springfield thing everyone's talking about? Well, a couple things to talk about. No one is safe, but I think if you're Boston College, Boston University, and Maine, you feel pretty good right now about your chances. If you can take care of the business you're supposed to take care of, which, as we talked about, is easier said than done in this league, you feel okay. UMass at 10, Providence tied for 11th. You feel like it's still a little bit in doubt, but they should be okay if they can take care of the games. There's no real landmines. And that's one of the things about Hockey East this year, Tyler. On the one hand, all these games are hard. On the other hand, all these teams are good. So you're not dropping like crazy for any of these losses. So that really helps the UMasses, the Providences, even the New Hampshires of the world. New Hampshire is the one that, really this whole theme of opportunity week, it's right now for New Hampshire. 6 games left against Maine, UMass, and Boston College. 4 of those 6 are at home. Now, you might even need to win the ones on the road even more to move yourself up, but this is their opportunity right here. You get 2 games at home against a rival, a team ahead of you in the standings. UNH, is on the outside looking in right now. Remember, the cut line is 14. It's not 16 because not all of the conferences have a team inside. So their conference champ automatically is going to bump someone from that 16 team race. The other thing, though, with UMass getting where they are, they're 10 right now, which puts them out of the range of being a 4 seed. Folks may be aware, we've talked about it a little bit. A lot of folks have talked about it. UMass is the host of the Springfield Regional, which means if UMass gets in the tournament, which it certainly looks like they're going to right now, they have to be in Springfield no matter what. If they were in as a 4 seed, then another Hockey East team could not be the 1 seed except for some circumstances, which again, we'll get to, but let's the simplest version first. They can't be the 1 seed in Springfield, which means that UMass, if they're a 4 in Springfield, there has to be some jumbling around of some things. Now, if Hockey East were to get 5 teams in, they could change that a little bit and have an interconference matchup in the first round. But without that, the rules say you can't. So the fact that UMass is now out of that 4 seed line and into that 3rd seed line as we wake up for this weekend, that makes a difference and should allow potentially, if there's a Hockey East 1 seed, whether that's BC, BU, Maine, and multiple Hockey East 1 seeds, would be able to go to Springfield. So the big things you're looking for if you're a Hockey East fan, what can UNH do with some of these big games against teams ahead of them because there's quality win bonuses. The other team I think you have to look at is Cornell. Cornell's been on an incredible run here recently. They basically won out since the start of the year. But the ECAC, Cornell does not have a game on their schedule with a team ahead of them that could give them a quality win bonus until a potential final against Quinnipiac. So every loss for Cornell, which again, they haven't had any, but if there is one to be had, that could allow Cornell to drop. Maybe that's a spot for someone else. in the NCHC with St. Cloud and Western Michigan. What is there? Michigan is right on the bubble right now, outside looking in, but has a ton of games against Big Ten teams that could allow them to move up. So those are some teams you're looking at on the bubble right now, along with New Hampshire. Again, UMass and Providence are not safely in, but have to feel pretty good about their chances, especially if they do anything this weekend with a couple of big opportunities against some of the Boston schools. Should be a fun weekend, as it always is this week in Hockey East.